This is Thriving at MCC Lehigh Valley.
Hi, and welcome to Thriving at MCCLV. This week's presentation is going to be on green space, both inside and outside the home, its benefits, the spiritual nature of greenery, how those benefits are often denied to those who need them most, and what we can do about it. So let's dive into it. As a quick exercise, I would like you to think about the nearest place you could find an abundance of greenery. Greenery like vegetation, trees, grass. For some of you, that area might be fairly close by, maybe even right outside where you live. For others, it might be some distance away. Now think about your memories from childhood. Do you have any good memories of green areas? Maybe a park or a field at school? Maybe you went through the woods having adventures with friends. And lastly, I'd like you to think about how greenery fits into our vision of what American life looks like. What are some of the ways we associate it with a good life? Maybe we think about hiking, or how, well, surely the American life is a big, massive, perfectly green lawn. Maybe you're thinking of national parks or places like Yellowstone. Now, I'm betting most of you were able to come up with at least a few places like that for these questions. And hopefully we're able to come up too with some positive associations, even if you've never had a yard or been to a national park. We inherently, as humans, know that green space is valuable. We might even see it as a luxury, something that's nice to have if you can afford it, but not really required for our wealth or our health or well-being. And that could not be more wrong. And we're going to find out why. First, let's get something out of the way. What is green space? Green space is land that is either covered partially or completely in vegetation, so trees, shrubs, flowers, grass. It may also have things like water features or rocks, generally natural features, although it doesn't have to be. The green space category usually includes things like parks, cemeteries, community gardens, hiking trails. They're generally open to the public, so the community can take part, so things like national parks and hiking trails. And they range from completely manicured fields for sports, kickball, dodgeball, soccer, things like that, to relatively natural landscapes, Monocacy Creek or Jacobsburg. Now that we know what green space is, we can talk better about its benefits. And here's where it gets wild. Green space has so many benefits. We at Heart were designed to be around green spaces, and that starts to show when you look at what it does for us. So first, we're going to touch on the physical benefits. A massive review of various studies was conducted, encompassing 7 countries and 8 million people. This review was conducted by the Barcelona Institute for Global Health in Spain, and they conducted that review in collaboration with Colorado State University. They looked at individuals over the course of years and analyzed the availability of green space by satellite, as well as the number of premature deaths due to any cause. What they found was that for every 0.1 increment in vegetative score within 500 meters of a person's home, there was a 4% reduction in premature mortality. Green space literally lengthens our lifespan. According to a report by the Trust for Public Land, access to green spaces during the recent pandemic was associated with lowering COVID-19 mortality. Another study by Dr. King Lee, a professor at the Nippon Medical School in Tokyo, found that by walking through a forest, inhaling some of the natural chemicals given off by trees increases your amount of NK cells. Now, what are NK cells? Those are cells that are part of our immune system and are associated with a lower risk of cancer. On top of that, another study found that patients recovering from abdominal surgery recovered faster if their rooms faced trees instead of a brick wall. That's how powerful this effect is. There's honestly so many physical benefits here that it could be a presentation in and of itself. It reduces the risk of diabetes, it lowers cholesterol, it lowers blood pressure. So we're going to move on a bit, but if that's something you find interesting, Time.com's article, The Healing Power of Nature, is a really good place to start. Next, we have green spaces. They provide an amazing amount of environmental benefits. They improve air quality by filtering out pollution and carbon and toxins from the air. They literally cool the space. Trees literally cool the space around them, both by providing shade and by a process called transpiration, where they absorb water through their roots and expel it into the air. So that reduces how hot the areas around them are, especially in urban areas. They sequester carbon by drawing it down into their roots which also absorb storm runoff. They reduce traffic noise, so they just generally make the environment overall better. And the benefits of this include mental benefits for us. A small study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that people who walked for 90 minutes in a natural setting, such as a forest or a nature park, had lower activity in an area of the brain linked to depression than people who walked in an urban area. Green spaces boost our mood, our creativity, our memory. They reduce stress and anxiety. Studies have found that green space are linked to lower self-reported rates of anxiety and depression and greater reported cases of well-being. Lastly, these spaces aren't just for us because we share the earth with a whole lot of life other than humans. Retaining green space and natural environments provide vital refuge for wildlife and insects, and that's important since they're the ones that are helping to pollinate our food, and they're basically one of the reasons we're here, so it's very important to have that available for them. So now we're going to watch a short video, and we're going to learn about two cities, one that prized green space, one that didn't, and then we'll see what effect that had on the cities over time, as well as what that kind of thinking did in a couple more cities.
This is the tale of two ancient cities and the trees that determined their destinies. In 3000 BC, Uruk was more densely populated than modern-day New York City. This crowded capital had to continually expand their irrigation system to feed its growing population. 2,500 years later, in Sri Lanka, the city of Anuradhapura had a similar problem. They were also growing constantly, and like Uruk, their city relied heavily on an elaborate irrigation system. As Uruk grew, its farmers began chopping down trees to make space for more crops. In Anuradhapura, however, trees were sacred. Their city housed an offshoot of the Bodhi tree, under which Buddha himself was said to have attained enlightenment. Religious reverence slowed farmers' axes and even led the city to plant additional trees in urban parks. Initially, Uruk's expansion worked well, but without trees to filter their water supply, Uruk's irrigation system became contaminated. Evaporating water left mineral deposits, which rendered the soil too salty for agriculture. Conversely, Anuradhapura's irrigation system was designed to work in concert with the surrounding forest. Their city eventually grew to more than twice Uruk's population, and today, Anuradhapura still cares for a tree planted over 2,000 years ago. We may think of nature as being unconnected to our urban spaces, but trees have always been an essential part of successful cities. Trees act like a natural sponge, absorbing stormwater runoff before releasing it back into the atmosphere. The webs of their roots protect against mudslides while allowing soil to retain water and filter out toxins. Roots help prevent floods while reducing the need for storm drains and water treatment plants. Their porous leaves purify the air by trapping carbon and other pollutants, making them essential in the fight against climate change. Humanity has been uncovering these arboreal benefits for centuries, but trees aren't just crucial to the health of a city's infrastructure. They play a vital role in the health of its citizens as well. In the 1870s, Manhattan had few trees outside the island's parks. Without trees to provide shade, buildings absorbed up to 9 times more solar radiation during deadly summer heat waves. Combined with the period's poor sanitation standards, the oppressive heat made the city a breeding ground for bacteria like cholera. In modern-day Hong Kong, tall skyscrapers and underground infrastructure make it difficult for trees to grow. This contributes to the city's dangerously poor air quality, which can cause bronchitis and diminished lung function. Trees affect our mental health as well. Research indicates that the presence of green foliage increases attention spans and decreases stress levels. It's even been shown that hospital patients with views of brick walls recover more slowly than those with views of trees. Fortunately, many cities are full of views like this, and that's no accident. As early as the 18th century, city planners began to embrace the importance of urban trees. In 1733, Colonel James Oglethorpe planned the city of Savannah, Georgia, to ensure that no neighborhood was more than a 2-minute walk from a park. After World War II, Copenhagen directed all new development along 5 arteries, each sandwiched between a park. This layout increased the city's resilience to pollution and natural disasters. And urban trees don't just benefit people. Portland's Forest Park preserves the region's natural biodiversity, making the city home to various local plants, 112 bird species, and 62 species of mammals. No city is more committed to trees than Singapore. Since 1967, Singapore's government has planted over 1.2 million trees, including those within 50-meter-tall vertical gardens called super trees. These structures sustain themselves and nearby conservatories with solar energy and collected rainwater. Trees and vegetation currently cover over 50% of Singapore's landmass, reducing the need for air conditioning and encouraging low-pollution transportation. By 2050, it's estimated that over 65% of the world will be living in cities. City planners can lay an eco-friendly foundation, but it's up to the people who live in these urban forests to make them homes for more than humans. The time to get involved with the climate movement is now. Don't know where to start? We've partnered with the UN to create a 30-day challenge designed to teach you everything you need to know to become a part of the solution. Start the challenge with a friend or family member today.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, does that just extend outdoors? What if I don't have any greenery outdoors? And I'd just like to reassure you that these benefits continue indoors, which is good news for all of us. These effects extend indoors. You receive some of the same benefits as what you get outside. You've got lowered stress and anxiety. You've got a boosted mood. They boost productivity and concentration having plants around. According to a study by NASA, indoor plants can also help improve air quality and cleanse the air of toxins in your home. They can even save you energy by affecting the humidity of a room, ensuring you use less energy trying to heat or cool it, which is really wild if you think about it. So in winter, a little bit of extra humidity actually makes the room feel warmer. So when the plants give off humidity, it helps your room feel warmer. And in the summer, as we talked about with the heat island effect in the cities with trees, this is essentially a smaller example of what that's like inside, where they release a little more water vapor, which can lower the temperature of the room. So that works out pretty darn well. And now we're going to get into the spiritual elements. So nature is spiritual. Greenery and all of these benefits we just talked about are gifts. They display the glorious beauty of creation, something beloved by God that speak to God's glory. The Bible backs this up. Job 12:7-10 says, "But ask the birds, and they will teach you, or the birds in the sky, and they will tell you, or speak to the earth, and it will teach you, or let the fish in the sea inform you. Which of these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In his hand is the life of every creature and the breath of mankind." Nature, all of it, the trees, the fields, the flowers, and their inhabitants, teach us about God and are worthy of our respect. Luke 12:27 says, "Consider how the wild flowers grow. They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these." Nothing we can make will ever compare to the beauty and the majesty of the environment around us. As a gift, it's something meant for everyone. Those benefits should be available to all of us, and they aren't. Now, as we go over this slide, I'd like you to keep in mind all the benefits we went over on the previous slide. The physical benefits like a better immune system, surgical recovery, a reduction in COVID mortality and premature death. Think about the lessening of stress, depression and anxiety, the reduction in airborne toxins, and the way green space cools the surrounding environment. A report released by the Trust for Public Land found that in the 100 most populated cities, neighborhoods where most residents identify as Black, Hispanic and Latinx, American Indian, Alaska Native, or Asian American and Pacific Islander, have access to an average of 44% less park acreage than predominantly white neighborhoods. A similar finding was discovered in low-income neighborhoods. A lot of these communities are what are called park deserts, which are neighborhoods that lack decent or any green outdoor space. A lot of this divide is due to decades of what's known as redlining, which some of you may have heard about. This is where people are denied goods or services based on race or ethnicity. And it wasn't just minorities being priced out of certain neighborhoods through things like mortgages and buying houses. It extended to a developmental favoritism for white neighborhoods. Favoritism white neighborhoods still benefit from. In non-white neighborhoods, parks are smaller, they're more likely to they're more likely to be paved over. This creates heat islands or areas of higher temperatures because now there's nothing to block the sun from being absorbed directly into all that asphalt and cement. There's nothing to shade it. And it also increases pollution. And they're paying the price in terms of health problems, things like asthma, respiratory issues, cancer, premature death, increased pollution, higher temperatures, and higher levels of stress. Eco-gentrification is another issue that starts to pop up as we try to provide green spaces. Cities will sometimes create green spaces in low-income neighborhoods and in park desert areas, but this can result in eco-gentrification when the wealthier residents of the city race to move into these areas and displace low-income residents by driving up the cost of living. As an example, in New York City, Highline Park, a park built along an abandoned railway, was created. A study found that homes within 0.1 miles of the High Line rose in value 35% more than homes in the range of 0.1 to 0.4 miles away. And it's already begun pushing long-term residents out in favor of newer, wealthier, and usually whiter people who are eager to move in. Even when we consider things like balconies and rooftop gardens, a lot of those buildings, especially in more urban low-income areas, don't have balconies or they restrict access to rooftops. That means there's no way for people to easily access or create green space on rooftops or on balconies. All right, so we know we need green spaces, we know we need access to green spaces, and we know that having green space helps improve life for everyone. But where can we even put it? What might that look like if we valued green space? Let's find out with this video.
This is the largest green roof in New York City. It's in the middle of bustling Manhattan, on top of the Javits Convention Center, a behemoth of a building with a 6-block footprint. But the roof hasn't always been green. Before 2014, it was totally barren. Now, just a few years later, when people walk out onto the roof, they say things like,
"Amazing, that's great, I didn't expect this, what a surprise."
But besides the great reactions, there are practical benefits.
We have 300,000 bees. We've seen 25 different species of birds on the roof. We reduced the temperature up here by about 6 degrees Fahrenheit. And we also save about 7 million gallons of stormwater runoff that's absorbed in the soil and the plants that are on our roof. We've been able to reduce our energy consumption by about 26%, and that translated for us last year into a saving of about $3 million.
That is impressive. How does one green roof get so much done? And what are all of the not green roofs in New York City doing with their lives? First, let's see how much roof space actually exists.
You know, they are a major part of urban landscapes. The round number that most of us think exists is about 1 billion square feet. 1 billion with a B.
That's like 22 times the size of Central Park in roofs. And in most cities, what isn't roof is another impermeable surface, like road, sidewalk, or parking lot. And these surfaces create a lot of problems for cities that green roofs can actually help solve. Let's take a look at 3 of these issues. The first is stormwater runoff.
Rainwater goes into pipes. It combines with what's called sanitary water. When there's too much rainwater, which happens hundreds of times a year around Manhattan, the wastewater treatment facilities shut down, and these valves just let the water just, shunt out into the rivers. It's got human sewage. It's the biggest source of pathogens to the Manhattan Island. With green roofs, that water, instead of going into the drains and polluting the environment, ends up just evaporating to the atmosphere through the leaves of these plants.
And then there's what scientists call the heat island effect, which basically means that cities are significantly warmer than the surrounding areas.
Well, I've seen asphalt roofs get up easily 170, 180 degrees Fahrenheit in the strong sunlight. They absorb about 90 to 95% of the sunlight. Green roofs, by comparison, are close to air temperatures.
Another problem green roofs can help solve is habitat loss. Cities can shrink or destroy the green space that's crucial for certain plants and animals to survive.
Currently, a lot of species might occur in smaller parks throughout the city that are relatively unconnected, but having high densities of green roofs would allow those patches to be more connected, letting, for example, butterflies travel from patch to patch with lots of stepping stones of green roofs in between.
And these are just 3 of the problems green roofs can help solve. But to really put a dent in any of these issues, cities would have to implement green roofs at a large scale. Stuart Gaffin, the research scientist you heard from earlier, estimates that if all of New York City's 1 billion square feet of roof space were greened, those green roofs could lower the city's temperature by nearly 2 degrees Fahrenheit and absorb over 10 billion gallons of stormwater each year. As cities continue to grow, all that empty roof space starts to look more and more like an opportunity, an untapped resource, a future ecosystem of problem-solving meadows in the sky.
Okay, so we've gone over a lot of information, and maybe you're feeling a little bit helpless or unsure right now since this seems like a big issue. But there are plenty of ways you can help, ways that we need help, especially in this area. This is not just a New York issue. We have plenty of urban areas around us, and on top of that, based on the proliferation of warehouses in the Lehigh Valley, there's been a lot of green space that we've lost. So let's hit out on some of the things we can do outside first, this sort of larger picture of what to do with the green space. The first thing you can do is vote, vote, vote. Talk to your representatives, hold them accountable by voting, bring up issues that have to do with green space at your local meetings. Be active, be present in what's going on in our own neighborhoods, because that's how you can affect a lot of this stuff that's going on. Second thing, if you're looking to volunteer, two lovely organizations that are working here in the Lehigh Valley to protect our green spaces, our local fauna and flora, are the Sierra Club Lehigh Valley and the Lehigh Gap Nature Center. Those are two very good options if you're looking to link up with someone because you're like, I need to do something with my hands, I need to plant trees, I need to do my thing. And I support that, and so do they. Next, when you make use of communal green spaces, please treat it with respect. You wouldn't leave garbage around or leave someone's house messy and dirty. And now you know how valuable green space is, so hopefully you're even more eager to take care of this. This is a space that you share. It's a sacred space, it's a spiritual space, it's a social space, and it's also one that's helping people live longer lives. So be kind when you're using these spaces. You can make use of native plants and greenery in your yard or even on your balcony if you have one. This will allow animals and insects that are native to the area to survive better. It will reduce water use. It's just an all-around good practice that helps build upon the green space that we already have around us and makes it easier for animals and insects like pollinators who help enhance and continue to grow our green spaces. It helps keep them alive. Another thing you can do, you can go natural with your lawn. Last month when we were talking about water, I brought the traditional American lawn up as a huge waste of water and a water polluter, and unfortunately that continues to be true. So consider transitioning your lawn, if you have one, to something like clover, more natural landscapes that will provide not just green space for you, but also green space for animals, birds, and insects around you, since they're the ones that keep the plants growing in the first place. And of course, you can add some trees. Always consider adding trees. I'm going to mention green roofing here real quick. It's not currently easily available, but if you can afford, if you have the money to do a green roof, it's something you could absolutely consider. There are companies that will turn your roof into green space with native grasses, bushes, shrubs, and even trees depending on your house. It'll help insulate your house as well. There's a lot of good benefits to green roofs, so that's something you can look into. You saw a little of it in that last video with the Javits Center in New York. It's a really cool idea, and we're hoping that over time that will become more easily available to everybody. Lastly, on this point, do not forget to make use of the green space. Talk it up with your friends, visit it, take a walk in it, enjoy it. This is all really important, all these other more practical things that we're doing, but we also need to value our green spaces in our everyday lives, and it's easier to do that when you regularly make use of it. So go out and get the myriad of benefits that we've already talked about. Lastly, to end on a happy note, if you either don't have a yard or maybe you do, but you want more greenery inside, indoor plants can provide a huge amount of benefits. So these are some things you can do inside. First, before you start, remember to support your local nurseries and gardeners. They will have everything you need, and they'll have lovely people there to help you pick out the plants you're looking for and help you find something specific. If you want cleaner air, you can look for plants that are very good at filtering toxins out of the air. These are usually plants with broader, larger leaves that have a higher surface area. The higher surface area means they have an easier time grabbing whatever nasty things we breathe out into the air and filtering that out. You can improve everybody's life if you, say, work in an office and you put some plants in there. I guarantee you, based on all of the studies, people will do a bit better. They will have a higher job satisfaction, according to studies, if they have plants nearby. Let's see. Oh, and remember that some plants are toxic, so always check first to see if what you want might cause harm. They can be toxic to children, they can be toxic to dogs and cats, so take a good look. Make sure that you're not getting something that if it gets munched on by someone who doesn't know any better or an animal that doesn't know any better, it won't get sick. As a general note, spider plants are near indestructible even for those of us with brown thumbs like me who are not very good at growing plants. They're good at cleaning the air and they are not toxic to dogs and cats. So there's my shout out to spider plants. So, in conclusion, greenery and green space is a gift. It's something spiritual, and it's a gift that comes with a whole host of physical, mental, and environmental benefits. Unfortunately, access to that gift is unevenly and inequitably distributed due to racism and inequality. So it's something we all need to work on if we're going to ensure equal access to all of us. But it is a problem that we can solve. Thank you.